Okay, good evening and welcome to the North Jersey Astronomical Group. My name is Kevin Kanad. I'm the president of the club, and welcome to all of our members and guests. We're going to start out our meeting tonight with a presentation. And for members, please stick around for the business meeting that will follow. But as I mentioned, we're going to be doing our presentation first, and so Mark Zdarsky is going to be our guest speaker tonight, and he is one of our members, not only a member, but also a former president of the club, and currently the chair of our observing committee. And he's going to talk about a very special event called the Adirondack Astronomy Retreat. And so, Mark, if you want to put up your PowerPoint, I'll let you take over at this point.
Sure. Okay, let me go. Can everyone see the screen okay?
Yep, looks good.
All right. So presentation is called the 2022 Adirondack Astronomy Retreat. It's a summer astronomy vacation, and it's the dates this year are July 24th to the 31st. This is a PowerPoint. It's a combination of a few PowerPoints, actually. Patrice Scatlin of the Montreal Astronomical Society and my own put together. So we're both members of the AAR, and we've been there for many years. So let me get started by saying this is probably the event I look forward to myself every year. When I leave it, I'm looking forward to the next year. It's a very dark sky site for the Northeast United States. It's one of the darkest, save for maybe Cherry Springs, but maybe a little bit darker. But it's not just that. It's you make friends. It's a close-knit community of good people. It's an astronomy vacation. So without further ado, we'll get started. So the idea, David Levy posed the idea many years ago, and it's called a vacation to recharge your astronomical batteries. What does that mean? You know, essentially you're going there to relax and observe under a dark sky with good people, good friends. If you don't know them right away, you're going to become good friends. It's just how this retreat is. Everyone here is really just wonderful. But again, getting back to the idea behind this retreat is a lot of us are members of clubs. We do outreach. We're with the public all the time, and we get to look at these objects very briefly through a telescope, and then 50 people in a line behind you are going to look at the same object. So you're not really, absorbing it, taking it in. But here you get to do that with friends in a relaxed setting under a very dark sky. So what you see here will be very different than what you see back home. So it was started by David and Wendy Levy. They've been hosts for 15 years. David used to go to this camp many years ago when he was a child, back in the 1960s, I believe. And so they started coming back to this place in the early 2000s. I believe it started in 2004. And they've been running this retreat ever since, up until the late 2010s. For you, those of you that don't know, although I'm sure many of you do, David Levy is a famous comet hunter. He discovered, as of last I checked, 23 comets. And many of them he co-discovered with Eugene and Carolyn Shoemaker. And yes, so it's the same Eugene and Carolyn Shoemaker and David Levy of the famous comet Shoemaker-Levy 9. And this was the comet that broke apart. It was captured by Jupiter's atmosphere and crashed into the planet back in 1994. and it changed the way we looked at near Earth objects pretty much forever. That Earth is vulnerable to these things, and ever since then, there have been many other scientific endeavors looking for other near Earth objects. But because of this effort back in the early 1990s, we are now more aware of what is in our backyard that could hit us and take us by surprise. So where is it located? It's located at the Twin Valley campsite. It's in the Adirondacks. It's owned by SUNY Plattsburgh, which is about 40 miles to the north of this site, closer to the Canadian border. This year, for the first time, NJAG will be sponsoring it. And we just had our 40th anniversary last year on top of that. So we're very proud to be making this happen again and being part of this. So where is it located? Getting back to that again. So it's located on Twin Valley Road in Westport. Depending on the map program you're using, sometimes it comes up in Lewis, sometimes it comes up in Westport. But you can see it's very close to Route 87 here, and it's just on the edge of the Adirondack Park. So if you're coming from, and most of us are coming from, northern New Jersey, it's a straight shot pretty much up Route 87, and it'll get you there within about 4 to 5 hours, depending if you hit any traffic. Usually you don't hit traffic on the way up. If you're coming down, you may hit some traffic on the way home when you get closer to the New York-New Jersey border. But for the most part, it's a straight shot up. There are many rest stops along the way, so fear not. You can stop, eat, many times along I-87. So it's an aerial view of the campsite. This is a satellite image, a Google image. And you can see over here, right down at the bottom, here's the road. This is Twin Valley Road, just coming up to the site here. Here's the main house. This is where the talks will be. This is where the dorms are, the men's and women's dorms are. Now, all along here in the background, there's the pond. There are 12 cabins. So you'll be able to choose whether you want to be in a cabin or in a dorm. So we'll get to that a little bit more in a minute. And parking down here on the main road. And the main reason why we don't want cars coming up here when people are observing at night, it's really dark, and that can mess with your dark adaptation. But you're close enough that you don't really have to worry about being that far away. The time of year is it fluctuates. It usually fluctuates around the new moon. Usually it's the end of July into early August. Infrequently, we've had one or two that were mid-late August. And some people like that, some people didn't. It's the nights are longer, but it also gets colder. But when we do it, end of July, it stays relatively warm, warm enough so you're not uncomfortable. So they consist of 2 sessions, and there are 3 days on either side. You can also stay for the full week. And so there are talks and activities in the afternoon and all-night observing. And we'll get more into that. So your arrival and departure times. When you get there, if you're doing the whole week, you'll get there, no earlier than 3 p.m. on that Sunday, the first Sunday. And you want to leave no later than noon the last Sunday. And the reason for that is they could be, and usually they do, they mow the lawn on either side of that. So at 12 o'clock sharp, they're there mowing the lawn when we're leaving or packing up if there's a few stragglers. So they ask that you're off the property by noon at that time. And 3 p.m. When you get there, that's mostly for setup, and they could still be mowing the lawn too. That's the other possibility. So they have, again, the 2 active sessions. A retreat 1 would be Sunday to Wednesday. Retreat 2 would be Thursday through Sunday. And there's something called an interim day Now, if you do the whole week, the interim day, combine that in there anyway. But it is possible to add the interim day to either side of, retreat 1 or 2 if you chose. So again, okay, we got into this bookable separate. So the main thing to remember, the interim day, generally there's no planned talks. There could be an impromptu talk. The meals are kind of slimmed down on that Wednesday, but the use of having that Wednesday, the major thing is, there's activities, there's other things we do, and it's another night of observing. So the food schedule, very important. On the retreat days, breakfast is at 10 a.m. We start later because we're up all night. Lunchtime is around 1 or 2, and supper is 6 o'clock. And late night snacks and coffee are available all night in the main house. That's, goes without saying. That keeps you going. It's a place to warm up. It's a place to talk, and it's a place to grab a snack and get some coffee. So getting to the accommodations, the cabins are considered rustic. They don't have bathrooms in them. They have just 6 cots essentially. But again, there is a bathroom in the main house. In the main cabin, you have showers and toilets, and there's a men's and women's dorm. You can barely see it in this picture on the bottom here. My arrow is. That's the women's dorm on top, and the men's dorm would be underneath it in the back. And we also have a computer cabin, and we'll get to that in a little bit as well. Again, once the cabins they all have windows. This year, we're going to ask you to open them up for ventilation because of, even, the Omicron is waning, we still want to, take some precautions and make sure there's some ventilation there. So that's the only thing we're going to really ask of you, to keep those at least 2 windows open so you have some cross ventilation. What do the cots look like? They're very simplistic. You bring your own pillow and mattress or sleeping bag, and essentially that's how that works. But they're rustic in nature. It's warm enough in the cabins. At night, it gets down to, usually, mid upper 50s, and in the daytime, it's in the 80s up there generally. I mean, some variance that time of year, but that's usually what you expect. But you don't want to overdress or underdress. You want to have a complement of clothes with you. So again, here's the main building, and here's the computer cabin. The computer cabin is going to have a bunch of plugs there, and you can go in there, bring your laptop, things you need to work on. There is some Wi-Fi there. It is DSL, so it can be touch and go. Just be aware of that. Over here is the main lodge with the kitchen and the dorms. This is the inside of the main lodge. This is from the front looking towards the back. Here you have the kitchen, and in the back you have the dorms, and the dorms have each have their showers and toilets. We do have our food is catered by Chartwells, usually the breakfast or the brunch rather, and the dinner. Those two things are catered, and all the food is included in the price at the end. So when we have rainy nights and there's nothing to do, there's movies. Sometimes folks are singing. They have impromptu, presentations. Trivia games. We have a couple really interesting trivia games that we play. And sometimes, let's say, the night before it was clear and the astro imagers had taken their pictures, they may decide to show those pictures to the group that night if the skies are cloudy. Also on cloudy nights, we have the option of you doing a campfire. We won't do a campfire on a clear night because that'll ruin your dark adaptation. Also notice in the background, all the red lights. So at night, there are all red lights and only red lights And it's adequate enough to see, especially once you're adapted to the dark. There are also lots of hiking trails available. So this is the view. Down here would be the camp, and this is the main Adirondack Park. So some of us have gone on longer hikes during the daytime, especially if we knew it was going to be cloudy that night. If we weren't going to observe, we'd go out and for a longer hike. But if it's clear, we're pretty much up all night doing observing as long as we feel like it. So there are 3 trails on the site, the small trails, and there are some hills. And these are, anyone can use it at any time. These are great, 1 hour up, hour down. So if you want to take a couple of hours in the afternoon and do this, this is available to you right there without traveling. You don't even have to leave the camp. So during the afternoons on the retreat days, we have a couple of presentations, maybe 2 or 3, depending each day in the main hall. So this is what it would look like from the back. It's a small screen, and here you can see Mary Lou making the presentation. Might be pictures a little overexposed. I can't see exactly what it was, which year this was either. I'm not quite sure. And the presentations they vary, many different topics. Some are about people's astronomy vacations. Some are not even astronomy related at all. And some are, scientific in nature, so there's something for everyone with these talks. And the members essentially that go to AAR are, allowed to give talks or asked to give talks sometimes. And some of these talks sometimes involve show and tell, meteorites under microscopes and things of that nature. Or David will talk about some of his past experiences, either in the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada, or talking about, what happened during the discovery of Shoemaker Levy 9, or even some poetry. So you'd be surprised at what you'll find from day to day, and it's always interesting. One of my favorite things to do is the Star Trek experience in Ticonderoga, and that's about 45 minutes, an hour away. But and usually that would happen on a Wednesday. A group of us would go, and essentially this is a Star Trek tour, the original series. They recreated the entire set of the Enterprise, the bridge, transporter room, captain's quarters, sick bay. Even the chess set is there for you to see, and you can walk around it, and you can even sit in Captain Kirk's chair. And sometimes they'll have celebrities there. William Shatner actually did sit in this chair, so you can actually say you sat in the same chair as Captain Kirk. Going back to the retreat, we do have an observatory on site. It's a Meade 14-inch Cassegrain, and it's usable, is inside it rather, and it's usable by the attendees. And this is what the scope looks like from the inside. The dome roof, you have to turn it manually. That one doesn't, that's not automated, but we should hopefully have the telescope up and running again. We have to do a couple of modifications to get it working again, but it should be running for this retreat. We plan to have it running for this retreat. So this is the observing field from a little bit back by the, I guess from the vantage point of the cabins. So there's the pond, and this everything in here up until the pond is usually where folks are doing their observing. Although sometimes you have people that actually will put their cameras further back by the pond to take, panoramic images of the Milky Way. So the idea here is you're gonna, there's plenty of room to set up your telescope. And generally you set up the telescope once and you want to plan to leave it set up all week. And you can see all the tarps over everything, and I'll get into that now, what you want to plan for if you're going to do this kind of trip. Some of the regulars here with some of the telescopes, David and some friends, Al Boudreau, John Thompson. these are some of the regulars that here. They're here every year. And this is Enterprise, the 16-inch Dobsonian. David also brings his 6-inch telescope, doesn't leave his side, Minerva. So you'll see that there as well. And members, will bring their own telescopes, various sizes, anything from, a small refractor up to a 25-inch Dobsonian can be on this site at any given time. And speaking of that, this was David Rossiter's 25-inch, and I had some of my most memorable views of the Veil Nebula through this telescope on this site. They're still burned in my brain. They don't go away. They're that good. So a few years ago, Skywatcher USA donated a 16-inch telescope. Some of the members actually also of AAR donated some like the shroud and the finder scopes and whatnot to make it a nice usable telescope. We've named it Enterprise, Enterprise D, as in Galaxy class. So it comes to the retreat. Observers can go look through it as long as it's not being used by David. David often uses it late night to hunt for comets. But any other time, people are encouraged to use this telescope. That's why it's there. So it's myself and Mary Lou here. This telescope was also, David basically said, for a few years that, NJAG used this telescope for outreach, because it was only being used at the retreat for the week. And he said, well, what about the rest of the year? So we would bring it down to New Jersey and use it for our outreach and bring it back up until my back got too bad. I couldn't, regularly move the telescope anymore, but it will be there. It's now in the hands of Ed Gunther, who's local to the area, and he's putting it to good use up there doing outreach. So also, David will allow you, you can ask him, he will sign your telescope for you. He's known to do that. He's glad to do it. He did it for me back in 2014 at my 12-inch Dobsonian, and did it for a few of us, Mary Lou, a few other people too. But if you ask him and he's there, he will definitely sign it for you. So visual observing, one of the main reasons why we're up there, and because it's such a dark sky site. So some useful items to bring before you start observing or even go up there. You want to bring tarps for the ground, that you're going to be, where you sit down, where you put your stuff, and the telescopes. The reason for that is going to be dew and rain. Telegizmo cover, or at least a good tarp for the telescope, maybe some bungee cords. Bug spray for yourself, but AAR does supply some, but it's good to have some as well. Sunscreen. During the daytime, it's the middle of the summer, so it still gets, the sun's rays are pretty strong. You want warm and cool weather clothes. It has been in the 90s at times, and it can get cold at night. So, in daytime, you'll be wearing a t-shirt like this. And the nighttime, you very well might be wearing a sweatshirt or even a light jacket. Bring your own pillow and sheets for the cabin. Power supply and or extension cords. DC power supply is very important. And I can't stress this enough. Do prevention for your telescope, especially if you have a telescope like a Schmidt-Cassegrain, a big lens in front of it. You want to have minimally a dew cap, but you also want to have some anti-dew heater strips to put on them as well. And I'll show them to you in the next picture. And a red flashlight, obviously, to get around and to do anything there. Because a red flashlight, red is the color that least interferes with your dark adaptation when you're there. an option some of us do, you know, some, including myself, we have a closable, fully closable garage tent with store your astro gear if you have a lot of it. And some of the imagers will have their computers in there and they don't want to disturb the visual observers. And so that's how they keep the light from getting out. Usually a red screen to put over your computer helps as well. So usually it's a combination of those things. But you can see here, and you know, many of these garage tents just hanging around there. That's not necessarily the people sleeping in there. Those are equipment, you know, whether they're chairs, eyepiece cases, cameras, telescope parts, and whatever. It keeps you know, from having to completely break down at night, and it keeps it safe from the rain, you know, or any kind of foul weather. Stressing about dew prevention. It can change from one night to the next. It can be very dry one night, and another night it looks like the telescope is sweating. So that's just keep that in mind. That will stop you dead in your tracks from observing. But if you're prepared ahead of time, you'll be in really good shape. These are some of the Telegizmo covers, what they look like. Again, you can use a regular tarp should you choose, but these Telegizmo covers are reflective, so they push the sun's heat out, and so, or keep it from coming in rather. So the telescope doesn't heat up as much during the daytime, and so when you're setting up to observe at night, you don't have to deal with cool down time nearly as much. It's much quicker. Not to mention it protects it from the elements. So here's an example of what some of these setups might look like. If you have a telescope with a tripod, a refractor, or Schmidt-Cassegrain, just having a tarp over the top or a Telegizmo cover with the bungee cord is fine. You want it to make sure it ties snug because, you know, the wind can blow it off at any point. If a thunderstorm rolls through, the telescope won't tip over. I'll tell you that. You know, we've had some really strong storms. If it's a tripod like this, you're fine. If you have a Dobsonian, you want to make sure, notice I have another tarp underneath the telescope in addition to the regular tarp, because when it rains, water can run in here. The idea being is you want to fold this tarp up to the bottom when you put the next tarp over it. That way water never gets in underneath and doesn't get the press board on the bottom of the telescope wet, and you know, then it'll expand. I've been bringing this telescope here probably, I don't know, almost 10 years at this point, and I've never gotten it wet once. And it's been through, I don't know, torrential thunderstorms and whatnot, and it still looks like it's a brand new telescope. So just so you know, you do those things, you're in great shape. So getting back to light pollution, we're in a dark green zone. If people are familiar with the Bortle scale, we're only a Bortle 2-3. So we once were in the blue zone, but it's gotten a little brighter over the past, you know, 10, 12 years. And that's partially from the light dome from Burlington. If you look at this little picture down here in the Northeast, you can kind of see a little bit of the light dome, but it's insignificant compared to, you know, any of the light pollution that we see anywhere here in New Jersey. It doesn't compare. For instance, Jenny Jump is right on the border of 3-4. So it's much orders of magnitude brighter there. There's a lot less you can see. So it would be on the outskirts of Burlington, being like Jenny Jump's skies. And you know, in Montclair State, that's a white zone. That's Bortle 8. So that's an incredible difference in what you can see, in the detail you'll see. So again, people come, you know, they do astrophotography and they do visual observing there. Again, you're on your Bortle scale, you're looking at what you can see, the difference, how many stars are visible. And, you know, this goes from 3, it misses 2. We're right on the border of 3 and 2. So it's almost a 2. You definitely see the Milky Way. You're going to get lost with how many stars you're going to see at first. It's going to be very overwhelming. And the detail you will see will be much greater. So I stole an old slide of, you know, one of my other PowerPoints, you know, what you can see in comparison. Probably won't see the Orion Nebula there this time of year, but I'm going to use it as a good example. If this was later in August, you would see it early in the morning. And I have at AAR. So I know what this comparison actually looks like. And so if you're in the suburbs of New York City, Montclair, Clifton, you're looking at the Orion Nebula, all you're going to see is this little core at best. If you go to Jenny Jump, you'll see the outer, like the brightest wings and essential part of M42. Going to the Adirondack retreat and looking the same telescope, same eyepiece, you're going to see not just the wings, but the fine tendrils of detail all the way out. These parts in the nebula will be visible. The first time I looked through my telescope and saw M42 in this site, this might have been 2014. This was the year that it was in August, and we had the sun rose a little bit later in the morning. I was just astounded. Never saw anything quite so detailed like that. Jersey's pretty good, but the amount of detail, the brighter objects that you're used to are going to look much richer than you're used to seeing them here, even at Jenny Jump. So I can't stress that enough. The difference is amazing. When you're there, the Milky Way will stand right out. There's no missing it through the very little light pollution. You're gonna look for, you're looking for your alignment stars. If you haven't been to a dark sky site, the first 20 minutes or so, you're gonna feel a little lost until you get used to everything, the sky being so filled with stars. Venus might be out in the morning. I'm not sure this time around, but if Venus is out and it rises over the mountain in the background, I have seen my shadow on the ground from Venus at this site. So that's how dark this can be. Again, there has to be no haze in the atmosphere too. So conditions have to be right. So great place to look is the Sagittarius star cloud towards the center of the Milky Way. Pretty much everything is visible there. All the nebulae, all of the clusters, everything's going to be pretty amazing. So during the daytime, folks bring their solar scopes or solar filters to view the sun, but during the night, you're looking at a much different place. Picks up a different characteristic. We do have meteor showers that we see there, even when there isn't a shower actually actively happening. You see rogues all the time, and many more. This time you'll probably see the Eta Aquariids and maybe the beginning of the Perseids, but the Eta Aquariids last week of July, you're going to see them without a doubt. And how many an hour, that can depend. It's a lot. Comets, if there's, usually we see, faint comets, but there's always something to see. And it's a lot of times it's David will be the first person to pick it out and find them right away. But usually every year there's at least one comet that we get to see at that site. Double stars, planetary nebulae, M27 will show a lot more detail. The closest comparison I can give you is M27 without a UHC filter would be comparable to M27 at Jenny Jump with a UHC filter. Add a UHC filter to this site and you see a lot more detail once again. Again, the Eagle and the Swan or the Omega are visible at this site, and it's one of the things you want to check off on the early side around before midnight or 1 in the morning. Then it might start to set behind the trees. The Swan has a lot of detail as well. And this astrophoto, this monochrome astrophoto, is actually not that far off the mark, which you'll see visually. Lagoon as well will also be visible and vibrant, along with the Trifid. The blue regions of the Trifid are going to be harder to pick out than the hydrogen alpha, but depending on the filter you have with you. Again, the Veil Nebula, I go back to David Rossiter's telescope, the 25-inch. If this were a black and white image, this is the image that's burned in my mind. This piece of the Eastern Veil over here will always be in my mind. Just looking through the eyepiece is the most detail I've seen in the Veil in my life, through an eyepiece anyway. You can see M33 visually. If you have really good eyesight and there's no haze in the atmosphere, some folks have actually seen M33 naked eye in the earlier days of this retreat. My eyes are not that good anymore. I definitely, with a pair of binoculars, you see it, and in a wide field telescope, you see it as well. M31. When you see it here, the best you'll see is the bright core. And even at Jenny Jump, unless it's a really good night, new moon, you might begin to see a little bit of the dust lanes. Not so at this spot. This spot, it'll look very similar to this picture here. In an 8-inch or larger telescope, you'll see the dust lanes in M31, no problem. And you definitely, you can't say, oh, is it or isn't it? Averted vision or not averted vision, you're going to see it. The double cluster has a lot more stars up there, compared to when you see them down here too. It fills up. If you have a wide field eyepiece, it completely fills it up. There's also many other deep sky objects that you'll see that are out of the reach of, our light polluted skies here. For instance, the Crescent Nebula. You can see it there, with an oxygen 3 filter. It's visible in a 8, 10, 12 or 14-inch telescope. I've found it every time I've looked. But smaller galaxies, icy objects, things that are like on the edge of vision, you can really push your optics here to its limits and go have fun. Again, we've had members as Adam Toder who've taken a bunch of images, and oftentimes, again, they show them, they present them there on those cloudy nights when we have them there. So to recap the dates for 2022, July 24th through 31st. So it's Sunday Sunday to Sunday. Again, it's 2 retreats, or you can combine it into the whole retreat. The Squarespace site is supposed to go live at the end of March. I will put, when it does go live, I will put the link and the notifications in the NJAG IO group. But in case you're wondering, it's Adirondack Astronomy Retreat at .space.com. Again, the 3 p.m. arrival time and the noon departure times on the back of your head. What does it cost? This is the probably something that's in the back of everyone's mind. So each retreat, if for an adult, is $300. If you're doing the whole retreat, which is going to include the interim day, the Wednesday, it's $640, and that's a little less for the day, having that extra day. It's not the full charge because we're not having that catered meal, those 2 catered meals from Chartwell's during that day. But we'll have some kind of slim down breakfast and lunch and dinner those days. And sometimes we actually do a barbecue on that day. We've gotten inventive on the interim day. children 12 and under, $165 for the one retreat, $355 for the two retreats. And again, North Jersey, because NJAG is sponsoring this, North Jersey Astronomical Group members are going to get a 10% discount. And we're going to provide you with a code to make that work. So when we pay. So in conclusion, it's a week of astronomy in a really dark sky, East Coast anyway. Vacation is very cozy, it's very good people, and you will make lifelong friends. I talk to most everyone here quite often. We've gotten really close, and hope to keep it that way. But if you have any questions, you can email Adirondack Astronomy Retreat at gmail.com. And if there's any questions here, right now, I'll take them as well. I think Patrice is also in the background. If there's anything I can't answer, maybe he might. But does anyone have any questions? Go ahead and shoot, please.
All right,
Hey,
Mark.
Mark, I have one. This is Anand.
Yeah,
Is there parking space for, how close can you get the, your vehicle to the actual telescope pads?
so
that you
there are
don't have
no
to kind of lug it around.
there are no pads. So if you look in this bottom picture here, there's a road up here. So we pull our cars up to the road way back down here. You can see the tent. See where my cursor is down at the bottom there? Actually, I'll back up.
Not at all.
All right, I'm going to back up.
It's kind of off the edge of
I'm
the
gonna
screen.
find another picture.
That might be better.
I'm going to find another.
Or you want to pull up the map? Maybe, would that be better?
I think Mark's image just froze.
I think he just froze.
Yep.
Patrice, could you chime in here and
So the
kind of
answer,
explain?
yeah. So if I understand correctly, the question is, how far can you get the car to where you actually dump your stuff? I'm going to say quite close, probably 10 or 20 feet at the most, but you cannot park the car there. And the reason for that is that the field is, it's grass and it's not compacted. So you would drive up the road, stop somewhere around the road, unload your stuff there, either go back or back up, then go park, and then come back and set up all your stuff. The road is made such that you can drive when you get in all the way up to the last cabin at the far end of the lake. There you can turn around and you can come back. So you won't have to cart your stuff for very long. And you would normally leave it set up for the entire time you're there. So either a 1 3-day retreat or for all 6 days. So you would tend to also pick up your stuff on the Sunday morning when you may have packed before. You may have packed Saturday night, and because especially if it's a good observing night on Saturday, you probably still want to use your equipment there.
Right. Yeah. Thanks. The reason why I asked that was, you want to decide. If you're coming, you got to decide on what kind of equipment you want to bring, right? So.
Yeah.
So if it is a long walk, you want to lug something smaller. If you can come closer, then you can bring something, that is a little bit more heavier, right? So.
Right, and so as Mark showed, Rossiter used to bring, has brought when he was there is 25-inch, right? That's not small at all. So if that gives you an indication of how comfortable people who are I would say regulars, but people who've been there before, they managed to do this. This isn't like you're gonna have to cart the equipment very, very far. I don't even bring a dolly to move the stuff around, right? I mean, I leave the cars in the middle of the road, and I'm gonna drop the stuff maybe 10, 20 feet off the road, then pull the car out. The car is going to be parked there for pretty much the rest of the week. I mean, there was a time when we had 3 kids, the wife, and all the equipment in one van. And at that point in time, there wasn't even enough room in our van to have clothes for the full week. So we took a midweek break to Plattsburgh to do laundry and stuff like that. So no, it's easy enough to get the equipment there. People who come will tend to bring the best of what they have. I mean, I know Peter has brought a 16-inch, and he's brought more than once. I mean, obviously, it's one of those truss construction that breaks down in all sorts of small pieces, so it fits in the car. But other than that, he was certainly very comfortable to put it there.
Sorry, guys, I'm back. My modem died right at that moment. Worst possible time. I had to reboot it. I'm bringing it right back up. Just a second. Oh God, I apologize. Where are you?
Patrice did a good job filling in, Mark.
Yeah,
Thanks,
Patrice
Patrice.
has
You're the
been filling
best.
in, so he answered the question.
Great.
Yeah, thanks, Patrice. Yeah.
Oh,
that
much
was
appreciated, my friend.
Are there any other questions about the events?
Yeah, I have a question. Can you bring a tent to sleep in?
So there's no reason why you couldn't, but that doesn't change the price.
Yeah,
Right.
understood. That's okay.
And whether or not, I mean, Marty is a fan of tents. Normally he has a cabin, but he's been known to take little naps in the middle of observing nights in his tent. So
Yeah.
I mean, his tent is basically a living room, right? He's got a cot in there. He's got all of his gear set up in there, and then he's got a
Like
porch.
this?
He's got his porch, and then you know, you drop by to talk to him. And yeah, you certainly can.
There you go. Okay. And is there any cell phone service at all, or is it a totally blocked out area?
No, there is, but it's very weak, and it depends of your carrier.
Okay.
And it's not, and you will not have service everywhere in the field. Typically, we find that it's either somewhere in the cabin or where the road peaks up from the bottom of the trees. That's pretty much the better spot for cell service. But I wouldn't count on that for watching movies. But well, I mean, if on a rainy night, you might want to. But certainly there is Wi-Fi. So if what you're asking about is data connection, the Wi-Fi on the site is there. It's not super, but it's certainly a high-speed connection, and you will get access to the internet that way if you want.
Okay.
Yeah, I have one more question. Are pets allowed?
I don't think so. We'll have to. I mean, it's not our decisions. Lori says that no, and I think that's Twin Valley's decision, which is really SUNY Plattsburgh's. But I think we need to follow up on that. If that's
yeah, I have a German Shepherd. You know, he doesn't leave me alone anywhere. So
okay.
Is it a service dog or?
No, it's not, unfortunately.
Yeah, what
So
I have done.
But it's a fun dog.
Yeah, what I have done in the past.
Question would be, can you clean up after him in a field all the time?
Right. And the other thing to, keep in mind that you are up there.
I've got a question. Is there power available on the field?
Yes. Yes, there will be. There's power that goes in through the observatory. Some of us will run power out of our cabins. Mostly I work with battery power most of the time, but there will be, if you bring an orange extension cord and a power strip, I'm sure, there's going to be a bunch of folks plugging in, especially running a computer.
I love big orange power strips and long extension cords, and there's a place in the middle of the field where there's a tap and everybody taps into it. Orange cords are wonderful.
Right. Normally, I think someone in cabin 3 or 4, which is the closest cabin to the field, will run out a power, an extension. But definitely where the observatory is, which is right when you come up, there is plugs that are outside of the observatory itself, and we can certainly run power out of there. Now, that means that you get at most 15 amps, right? So not a whole lot of hair dryer running for to remove your dew off your corrector plate, but certainly more than enough to recharge the batteries of all the stuff you use to run your gear overnight.
I mean, there are 12-volt hair dryers. I do have one that I use if you have to get the dew an emergency off of your diagonal or your corrector plate or something like that. They do scope stuff sells them. You plug into a cigarette lighter, if you need to use something like that, that will do the trick. But nothing that draws a lot. You don't want to use anything that draws a lot of amperage. Then you're gonna be throwing breakers. I actually did that to someone. I might have been David Rossiter by accident with a hair dryer, and that's when I learned my lesson and never did that again. So,
right.
So,
I think there the rule is you want to prevent your dew strips if you've got a corrector plate or things like that is your friend, right? You want to prevent dew collecting because it's a lot easier to do that, a lot less power than trying to remove it after the fact.
Absolutely. Every time, all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I've been to the Winter Star Party in the Florida Keys, and the same is true there as well, right? I mean, it's I think it's more of a Star Party rule or etiquette than it is unique to our event. I mean, you've got to wonder, and you have to think about it this way, right? You're there because there's a dark sky. It's dark because there's relatively no light pollution. There's no light pollution because there's no electricity in the neighborhood where you are around you. And there's no electricity because either you're lost in the wilderness, or in the case of the Winter Star Party, you're in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, right? So it unfortunately, I think Okie-Tex and a Texas Star Party are a bit like that as well. I've not done those events. I mean, I've done the Winter Star Party 5 or 6 times. 5. And it's got the exact same problem. I mean, they have it worse in the sense like Hurricane, what was it? Basically tore apart the hydro grid in there, and now in the Winter Star Party, you basically have to turn up either with a generator or solar to power you for your week. So you live limb. But at our event, there's definitely power available, but of course for scope operation you want to be I was going to say semi-autonomous. You want to have your scope with your battery that will run on you overnight.
That's what I often do myself. I'll run a battery, and charge it up during the daytime, and when I go to bed. And matter of fact, that's the only thing I bring back to the cab. Could be, unless it's a power cord nearby, is the battery. Everything else I leave on on the field or in the garage tent or something like that. Yeah, and DC power is cleaner. You less chance of hurting your equipment with battery power as opposed to plugging it in. That goes whether you're home or in the field. Unless you have a UPS or something like that, there's always that chance. So always know that, but yes, if you're running your computer, running a camera and you need the power, that's great. You can plug in your telescope, but the power is probably what we would call dirty power, very similar to what's a Jenny jump. So there's always a little question mark, as far as, hurting your electronics.
Yeah.
I have another question.
Unless
Mark.
you get,
Is it?
yeah, sure.
Is it? Can you leave out if you bring your own, what do you call, rechargeable power packs and the solar panels that go with it? Can you leave them out? And then they might. I mean, it's not going to take up a lot of space. It's maybe like 6 by 10 or 8 by 10, I think. Can you leave them by around? Well, will that be okay?
Yep, sure,
It's-
absolutely, no problem.
Yeah. Yeah, as long
I
as
mean-
it's not in the way of like someone walking or anything like those lines,
Right. I mean, there's certainly
it's
more
not
than there's certainly more than enough square footage on the field for that to happen. What you need to think about is if you leave this stuff out there all day and all night, right? Is it going to blow off in the wind? Is people going to trip on it or things like that? That's more of the order of considerations you need to think about, right? I mean,
Yeah, that's a good point.
yeah, the fair advantage there. I mean, the big advantage is that whether you're there for 1 or 2 retreats, you set up when you turn up and you tear down when you leave, right? And if you're there for a whole week, it means the scope went up on Sunday afternoon or evening, and then it came down maybe Saturday night or Sunday morning, and that's it. The rest of the time, the stuff stays put where you dropped it.
Right.
Okay.
It means that if you don't have carry cases and you're bringing stuff in cardboard boxes, then you'd have to think about that because they could get humid. There would be humidity overnight as dew falls down, right? But that's only what your equipment is and what it's going to do. I mean, even if you made a mistake, I mean, you're on site for the whole week. So if you need to pull something in your cabin at the end of an observing run, then so you go ahead and do that.
Can you bring
Thank
a portable generator?
We've never had anyone with that. Nobody's felt the need for it. Like I say, we can run 110 out of the observatory or from cabin 3-4. So we can definitely get about 15 amps, maybe 30 amps worth of power out of that. Do you have anything in particular that would require that much amperage?
No, just as a backup. I've got a small Honda generator. It's portable. It's not a big unit. I use it around the house pretty much, but
Right.
nothing, no particular need other than just as a potential backup.
Right. I mean, you can ask Mark. We've had I don't remember ever anyone bringing a generator. I don't remember anyone ever complaining that they wished that they'd brought them, that they needed it.
That's fair.
Right. They usually you will run your gear off of a battery for the course of the evening, and usually you would be able to charge it during the day, and that usually turns out to be more than enough.
Okay. Good.
Right. I mean, if you've camped in areas where people run generators, if you experience that, you'll know that they sometimes they get annoying. But
You do. Yes.
But we've never forbade them, and we've never felt the need to do that. So I think what you should shoot for is that if you have whatever you need to recharge the batteries, during the day for whatever use you need at night, then you should be fine.
Any precautions for wildlife? Thinking specifically about bears.
No, that's never been an issue. I've never heard of bears in the area either.
You'll hear a coyote in the middle of the night, but it's always in the distance.
Mhm.
They never come into the camp. We're too noisy and whatnot. We're too noisy for them.
I was going to ask that question. Yeah, thanks, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't bring my dog there because the dog may,
Run off.
get lost, and that's always a concern. What I was going to say before my modem crapped out twice, what my wife and I often do, we often have someone come over and take care of the pets. If we're gone for 2 or 3 days or a week, feed them, or if they're walking the dog, they'll walk your dog or something. There's always that option, and we've done that when we're gone for a few days or a week. So.
Okay, speaking of noise, Lynn asked a question in the chat. Is stargazing generally quiet? Does all this equipment make noise?
It can. When something slews, it will make a rear noise, but it's not disturbing. It's not like it's not like an amusement park. It's people can easily sleep through that, if that's what you're asking.
And I've done it in the past. I've fallen asleep in the chair in the middle of observing nights because it was nice and warm, and I've been told I snore quite a bit. But yeah, so.
Okay, well, are there any other last minute questions? Otherwise, we'll wrap this up. Okay, any other questions? I don't hear any other questions or see anything else in the chat, so we will end this presentation. And so thank you very, very much, Mark and Patrice, for filling in. And
thank you, Patrice. Yes, thank you.
Yes. So for members, please do stick around for the business meeting. For everyone else, for our guests, thanks for joining us. Remember that we do have another presentation next month, the second Tuesday of the month at 7:30. We will have a presentation by Chris Morrow, one of our members, and he's going to talk about Lagrange points, which is really fun. So we'll hear about that.